Hey everyone, welcome to another Marvel Monday. This will be our last one for a little while now.
I know, I'm kind of sad.
We're going to have a little bit of a break on Marvel before we get back to Loki in June. But as you can see, today we'll be talking about Assembled, the making of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the new documentary that just hit Disney Plus on Friday. But of course, before we do that, Bekah has some new Marvel must-haves to talk about. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah, some of these are new. Some of these are just kind of a rehash of things that are available now. Nothing specific to Assembled, but there's some fun stuff. So we've got, of course, these cos babies for both Falcon and, or I guess Captain America and Winter Soldier.
That's going to take some getting used to for sure.
Right. So these are pre-orders. All of these items that we have in this article are new to Shop Disney. So they might not be completely new, but they're new to Shop Disney. And last week we talked about the Magic Band. It's finally there. Just some more. There's a Captain America and the Winter Soldier shirt for adults and one for kids. So you and your little one can twin. And then we've seen the Funko figures as well, as you can see there. And then, because it's Marvel, we've got some the Agatha All Along shirt.
Interesting.
Monica, and then some WandaVision shirts as well. But here's what I think is most interesting for your Marvel must-haves. We have some theatrical film shirts. So there's the Eternals logo, and I think I feel like Marvel's trying to, or Disney is trying to be smart about this and gets just even a little bit out there before the movies come out.
Yeah.
I think they've learned their lesson with WandaVision. I mean, you kind of want to make sure everybody's into it. But we've also got the Shang-Chi. And then this one,
that's
Venom. Yeah. So it's not cinematic universe at all, but it is Marvel. So that's pretty cool. And then we have, of course, Ms. Marvel and Loki. The Marvel site itself they've divided up some of their must-haves for Bucky. So you've seen most of this already, but I will link to all of that. And then, of course, there's a whole slideshow you can go through of the different items. And then they also did one for John Walker. So same kind of thing here. If you want to shop that stuff specifically, there's some items there. And then right as I published this article, they dropped more stuff. So what do you think of this?
What exactly am I looking at here?
It's a plush, a 10-inch superhero plush for play and display. It's the weirdest looking thing. I'm sorry, but it is so bizarre.
This reminds me a lot of, and some people out there might know what I'm talking about. There were like these plush figures of WWF at that time wrestlers. Like there was a Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and stuff like that. And they were probably a little bit taller than 10 inches, but that's a very strange product. But that's what that reminds me of.
So there's that. And then if you want some more of Sam as Captain America, we've got this poster. I think we covered this last week. I think they might have actually dropped some, or not either of these. Just there's a new poster of Sam for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? But it's as Captain America.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool too. But that's what we've got for this week's Marvel must-haves.
Very cool. I like that poster a lot.
I do too. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where I would put it in my house, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, we need to just dedicate a room to these Marvel must-haves every week.
Right.
But all right, let's dive into Assembled, the making of the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Pull up our images here. There we go. So overall thoughts, I was surprised that I liked this one more than I did the one for WandaVision. I think I thought that they shared some more interesting details, whereas WandaVision was shot so differently, and I thought it was going to be very unique. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this one.
I agree. I think with some of the WandaVision, we already knew so much stuff going into it, like the 50s set or the 50s and 60s look and how, it was all exciting that they were even doing that. So you had a lot of that already explained. But yes, I think that this was a very enjoyable behind the scenes for me.
Yeah. So one of the first notes that they gave us, I don't remember who, I think it might have been Malcolm Spellman, but I know Anthony Mackie talked about it a little bit too, that basically the whole idea for this show came from the line from Endgame when Falcon, or when Sam said, like, it feels like it's someone else's. We were talking about the shield when Steve was giving him the shield. And I thought that was so interesting that they took one line from a movie and branched that out into an entire television series.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's so neat that they can dive into some, small moments and use that as like a springboard for a larger story. This is so unprecedented. We don't get stuff like this with most things. So yeah, really neat that they did that.
There's still so many huge Marvel stories to tell, and yet they are finding these little details to just expand upon. And I love that they're doing that, because that allows the MCU to kind of breathe. Like we talked about before, how, we wanted to see what the world would be like post blip and people, getting used to this new world. And that's what they gave us by expanding on that one line, as opposed to just jumping into the next Captain America story.
Right. Yeah, I kept thinking about that, because if you were to see Sam as Captain America, jump to a movie and he's Captain America, like I'll be accepting of it. Absolutely. Or if you're not going to follow these Disney Plus series, you can still, you'll still be able to enjoy the feature films. But I think, you would jump into it and you'd be accepting of it. But this gives you so much more background, and it's nice to kind of be able to like sit with that idea and to see how he actually got to that point.
Yeah, and that's a point that Anthony Mackie talks about early on too, is he wanted it to feel genuine, and he and writer Malcolm Spellman talked about it too. They didn't feel that this character would just accept that and move on as Captain America. He would, have to go through and get to the point where he can accept that. And I like that they went in that direction. I'm glad that they did, because it did feel like it was earned in the end, as opposed to, just here's the next superhero for you to all enjoy. And, Anthony Mackie really dove into some deep topics throughout this documentary here, but I really like that he expanded on that a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
We hear from pretty much the entire cast going through this entire documentary here. The only one that stood out that we don't hear from is Torres, the actor who plays Torres. But aside from him, we hear from just about everybody, obviously including Sebastian Stan. And I thought it was interesting. He talks about, keeping his character consistent. And what if one fan decides to watch First Avenger and then The Winter Soldier and then Civil War and watch just his movies all in a row? Would this character feel consistent across each story? And I like that, he looks at it that way. It's funny because we've seen so much of Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan messing with each other and just being funny, but it's clear how serious they take these roles and how much work they really put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You were saying that they wanted to keep the characters consistent, and I don't want to jump too far into any one direction, but talking about how you're looking at Bucky dealing with his past and Sam dealing with his future. And I thought that was such a great way to put that. Like, yeah, you're, and that does keep, I think, with the consistency of the characters. Like, they have to confront these things that are either coming up for them or that has already happened. And it is neat to see how much they put into these characters and into these roles that they bring to life for us. So. Yeah,
no, I mean, absolutely right. And you already dropped the word, but I'm going to bring it up again. It's unprecedented the way that, we don't get to see actors play a role like this for so long in so many different projects. So, I mean, obviously this has been happening with the MCU before. Sebastian Stan is still catching up to some of the other guys like Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth.
Sure.
But it's so interesting to see them develop the character and yet still stay true to who they are right from the beginning. So it is cool to see the amount of work that they put into it. By the way, and whoever wants to do it, just keep a count of how many times we say unprecedented. I know I drop it all the time.
Yes.
I want to talk about my favorite character.
Of course.
Daniel Bruhl was obviously featured quite a bit in this, and it was really the one thing director Kari Skogland talks about Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan working so well off each other, having such great chemistry and having so much fun. But then she said adding Daniel Bruhl into that mix, and I wouldn't have thought this. I thought different personality. I didn't think he would mesh as well with those other two. But she says at times the three of them together are so hilarious, and she actually had to like pull them back and be like, we can't be having this much fun. So I thought that was a really funny line.
It was the third episode where they go to Madripoor? Is that, am I?
Yes, yeah.
That was, I mean, I think that's, I don't know if it's my favorite of the episodes, but every scene that the three of them were in together, I was like, this, yeah, she's like, they're hilarious together. Like, it was so fun watching them. I'm like, I was like, don't let this scene end. I just, even when they're walking towards Lowtown, I was like so giddy. I'm like, this is so good.
Their chemistry is just effortless, and you get to see some behind the scenes stuff where Daniel Bruhl in particular is really funny, and it's so like it catches you off guard because he's such a serious character in this show and the movie previously, and it's really funny to see. And there are obviously some very funny moments throughout this documentary with Sebastian Stan, Anthony Mackie, and of course Daniel Bruhl. And I mean, there's another one in this with Bruhl that we'll get to in a little bit because it was.
I know what you're talking about.
It's classic.
Yes.
If I had one complaint about this documentary, it's that I would have liked to hear a lot more from. Oh, and this is one of the scenes that we get to see with Daniel Bruhl and Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, and you can see just how much fun they're having. Anthony Mackie is actually dancing in this moment. But I would have liked to hear more from Wyatt Russell and his experience playing John Walker. And I know this is shot, as they're still shooting these things, and so this is long before we had any fan reaction, but I would have liked to hear from him about fan reaction.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's true. Because I didn't follow much of what was going on, but I saw some things on Reddit where people were commenting on all of the hate he was receiving or the negative tweets coming at him, and people being upset that he was the new Captain America. And yeah, the fan reaction, I think that would have been an enlightening conversation with him.
Yeah, and I think it was the little bit that we did get to hear from. Like I said, we hear from just about every member of the cast, so I totally understand that they didn't get a ton of time with each one. And we do get a few moments with him and bouncing back and forth between him and Clay Bennett, who we'll get to in a minute here, who played Lamar Hoskins, a.k.a. Battlestar. But Wyatt does talk about gravitating towards characters who have to make these tough decisions. And I'm like, that makes sense with this character because every step of the way, it was just like another crazy moment for John to try and overcome. And then obviously has that big decision at the end where he begins his redemption arc, I guess. So it was interesting hearing about that. I would have liked to dive into this character a lot more, but it was cool just to hear from him at all about it.
Mm-hmm. I will say the Vanity Fair podcast that still watching that has been going through this, she got to interview him. So it has nothing to do with the Marvel Assembled, but he does talk more about that character and some of the choices that the character had to make and just the whole audition process. So if you do feel like searching that out, there's a good interview with him over at Vanity Fair.
Yeah, that I think will probably satisfy that itch I have to hear more about that character and his experience playing him.
Yeah, definitely.
I mentioned Clay Bennett, who plays Lamar Hoskins. this was one of my favorite moments in these sorts of things are always, hearing that the actor is a comic book nerd. And when he talks about getting the news, because he found out he was going to be in the project, but didn't know the role. And he assumed it was just going to be some minor role, maybe a line or two, something like that. And then he found out he was playing Hoskins, and he was really excited because he had comics with that character in it. They showed the one of the Captain America comics with Battlestar behind Captain America. So it was really cool to hear from him and hear that sort of giddiness in his voice.
Well, and I know we'll talk about it a little later on, but so many of the cast members just seem to have, or even actors who may not have been in the MCU very long, but when they find out that they get to be part of it, everybody's excited about it. And I think that says a lot about the studio and about the production and about the quality of the stories. Like, people want to be part of these universes or in these worlds, and I think that's amazing. So knowing that they're as excited about the roles as we are as an audience, I mean, that's like, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, and to draw a parallel to the making of WandaVision, this matches up with what we heard from Tiana Paris when she found out that she was playing Monica Rambeau, and she was all giddy and excited and thrilled with it. And then with WandaVision, we had Catherine Hahn, who was like this longtime pro, just absolutely knocked her role out of the park. And with the comparison with Falcon and the Winter Soldier would be Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing Val, and it was the same thing. It was like I didn't feel that same excitement of like, oh, I'm just so happy to be part of a Marvel project, but at the same time, it was like they pitched her. She said they pitched her the character, and they said Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. She's like, I'm in. Like that. The name alone is what won it over for her. So yeah, it was interesting to hear. Not that she wasn't excited to be a part of it, because she clearly was. Sure. But it's such a different dynamic with such an accomplished actress to fit to be brought in like that and selling the character to her. It was cool to hear that side of things. Yeah,
I agree.
and of course, just again, so excited to have her be a part of the MCU. It was really interesting. One of the producers featured in in Assembled referred to her character as a Nick Fury type. I don't know. Did you catch that?
Yes.
So one of the rumors going around, and the theory, I guess I should say, as to where this might be going, is that it could be leading to a Dark Avengers team, which is something pulled from the comics and very different in the comics. It's actually formed by Norman Osborn there. We obviously don't have that character. It would take a lot to establish him and then have him build a team like this. So that would be a way down the road if it was going to be him. But Val could easily fill in that role, and having her be the Nick Fury type, this could be heading in that direction. So it could be Thunderbolts, it could be Dark Avengers, Dark Avengers would be basically, how it sounds. It's a comp for each actual Avenger. So John Walker would be your Captain America. They had Bullseye, who obviously hasn't been introduced in the MCU, played Hawkeye. Abomination could be your Incredible Hulk. So they could be going down that road, and it's interesting that they kind of threw a little tease at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much about the other like Avenger-esque teams, but I know you're our expert. But it's neat to see what they're kind of setting up, or like they're laying that groundwork, and we probably won't get everything that we think we're gonna get, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they choose to do and how they're gonna tell those stories.
Yeah, and with that, I don't know if you got the chance to see that video that Marvel released today, just kind of teasing all of their upcoming projects. It's a very busy slate already, so I wouldn't expect to see a Dark Avengers movie coming out in the next 2 years. But there's definitely like a possibility that they set up pieces here and there, like Marvel has done over the past 11, 12 years, whatever.
I know. Yeah, I think it's 12. My goodness.
Yeah. Another actor we get to hear from is Florence Kasumba, who plays Io. And this was another one where it was just like, she was so giddy and excited to be playing this character again. And this is, the third time that she's playing this character. So it was really cool to see how excited she still is. One of my favorite things that I heard in this entire documentary was her talking about the fact that she trains all year, just all the time, to stay in shape, to be a Dora Milaje, like at the drop of a hat. If Marvel needs her, she's there. She's ready to go. And two, that she stays in contact with the other Dora Milaje. It's like they're the real
right?
like
Right? No, I was thinking the same thing. Like, how cool is that? That you show up to do a movie maybe one time, and then it turns into this, like, you have this group of friends, and you kind of are the embodiment of these characters. So cool.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's so awesome to hear stuff like that. I mean, we see red carpet events and talk shows and stuff like that where like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. have a relationship and they're friends and stuff. But to hear that the Dora Milaje specifically, like this tight-knit group, is just actually in contact year round is so cool to hear.
Yeah.
And again, it was just really fun to hear how excited she was about playing this role every chance she gets. They also got into some more serious stuff and stuff that I think, like, I mean, first we'll start off. They had production delays because of they were going to film in Puerto Rico, and there were earthquakes. There was an earthquake ahead of their scheduled production or their scheduled filming, and they were still going to go down anyway because they should have been safe afterwards. And another earthquake hit right before they were about to go down. So it was interesting hearing about the scramble to change their schedule and everything. And then they had to just go to Prague, which was on the end of their schedule, and just move everything around. And it's so, you don't even think about this kind of stuff, right? You just think, okay, Marvel announced it, it's happening, it's coming out this day. Like, that's when I can watch it. But all of the stuff that goes in, and they talked about it's, 100+ people that they have to fly down there. There were people that were already in Puerto Rico during the earthquake that they had to get them out of there. And it's just, it's fun to hear, that side of the production story, really, from not even the cast, but hearing it from the people that make these things happen.
Right. Yeah. Those, like you were saying, you don't think about any of this stuff. Like, you've got to have your cameras there. You've got to have your location scouted. You probably have to, depending on where you're shooting, close down certain streets and work with local governments and stuff to, and businesses to be like, hey, we need this area. So yeah, it's a huge process that is just like not as simple as, oh, we're making a movie. Right.
And then, of course, something else pretty big happened while they were trying to film this.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. And this is what I wanted them to get into with the WandaVision one, which they didn't really touch on. But they did give us, the story here when the pandemic became a real problem, what the process was like for them then, because they were in Prague. As we said, they moved that up in their schedule. And so they were filming, and then all of a sudden this became a real issue. And so again, 100+ people. And if you're in a foreign country, now you have to worry about, well, travel's going to get shut down. We have to get everyone home. So they talked about that scramble and waking people up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get them on a flight at 5 a.m. And I can't even imagine the nightmare, like the stress nightmare that is.
Oh, seriously. I know. Like, I think about the things that affected me with COVID, and it wasn't anything, like, at all. You think, oh, how frustrated I was with changes just to, like, personal life and everything. And it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, let's make this put this on a grand scale. And it's, people weren't even in their, like you're saying, they're on location. Like, they're not even in their homes. And yeah, like, that's got to be maddening.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't even know if you're going to be able to get home at that point too. Like the travel bans and everything that was going on. It's a scary situation that they had to deal with. And then on top of that, even when you do get everyone home, your job's not done. You still have a lot of work to do to get this show put together. So I can't even imagine the amount of stress that everyone involved was feeling at that point. And they do, they show a decent amount of it in this documentary. So it was cool to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Back to some fun, lighter stuff here. It was one of the interesting things here, and this is production designer Ray Chan. and you hear Kari Skogland talking about a conversation that they had, and they were trying to put together Madripoor, and they were in a small town just outside of Atlanta in some back alleys, and she was like, "Do you think you could?" And he said, "I think I can make this work." And that's what they made Madripoor out of. And you were talking about before, like how like those scenes and everything, like Madripoor added so much to those scenes and how cool that city was. And it was just some back alleys in a small town outside of Atlanta. It's amazing the work that they can do.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, you had some of it, of course, is practical or like, these actual sets, but then there's all of that, the special effects and stuff layered over it. But still, even diving a little bit further into the bar, like I didn't realize there was an open air bar, which I thought was interesting as well. But yeah, you're like, this seems like it felt like a very real place. And yeah, here it is. It's real. It's just
Yeah. It's just like a few buildings in some small town. I mean, I don't know what I expected it to be. I didn't think they like took over a whole city, but it felt like it. And they did such a good job of making it feel like that.
It really did. Yeah.
So we talked about it before. Daniel Bruhl was hilarious in this documentary, and they give him the opportunity while we're in Madripoor here. He shoots this entire commercial for this fictional store called Suitcovia, where he gets his outfit from, and it's the highlight of this documentary.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was good. I was like, this is so stupid, and I love it. Like, just how his delivery, it was so funny. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and he was pretty funny in a couple of scenes, but it was more of like playing off of Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie. I hope they give him an opportunity to be funnier going forward. And if they do go in the direction of Thunderbolts, I think there should be plenty of opportunities for that. So I hope we do see that, because I mean, he's clearly very, very funny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking earlier, you were talking about, how funny the three of them were. He wasn't like, did he do anything that made us laugh in Civil War? I feel like
in Civil War,
I feel like he was very stoic and serious, and you're just like, I didn't find him humorous at all. And here it's like, oh gosh, this is a completely different version of the same guy. So good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Civil War, he is on his revenge plan from losing his family. So I guess it wouldn't make much sense for him to get a chance to be too funny there. But yeah, you're right. Like, he was very, very serious, straight-laced character, and he has kind of loosened up. And now I think we should be getting to a point where he can just completely let loose.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Disney, if you need a themed apparel shop in Avengers Campus, Suitcovia. I mean, you just make that a real thing, please.
And sell that coat, as long as they're selling that coat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get back to hearing from some of the cast, including Emily Van Camp, who plays Sharon Carter. It was interesting hearing her talking about, getting back into the training and everything, and how she used to be a dancer. So like the physical side of things came very natural to her. But I thought it was really interesting hearing from some of the creative team that they considered the idea of exploring Sharon Carter a little bit more in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they wouldn't. I mean, like watching those finished products, I'm like, where would you have fit her in? Like, yeah, I feel like she was a casualty of the storylines containing as much as they did. But I would have been happy to have her in there. Just
absolutely. What she needed, what her story needed, was a tie-in issue, right? Like in comics, we have these big events happening, and then there's these tie-in issues that are happening at the same time, but sort of on the peripheries of the story. And you could have just seen what it was like for her going through this time period. So and this is the sort of thing that Marvel is working towards now. Like, we can get that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Black Widow is set in a different time period, but going forward with that, we don't know what's going to connect to what. And we could see stuff like that with these Disney Plus series being a sort of tie-in issue to the big blockbuster movie that's happening at the time.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool to see.
I know. I was afraid that I was going to be like completely, it would be too much for me, that I just wouldn't be able to keep up with everything. And so far I'm like, nope, keep giving me more. Come on.
Yep. Yeah, if we could have a movie come out in the middle of every series, that would be great. Just keep giving me more and more.
Yep.
Another thing I thought was interesting was Malcolm Spellman talking about the balance of the whole power broker twist. And he actually said, like, sometimes we were too heavy-handed, sometimes we were too light on it, but I think it worked really well. And I thought it was obvious, wasn't it? I thought that's what they were going. I thought they were purposely being heavy-handed and throwing it out there and not really using it as a twist.
Well, maybe they were trying to not trick us, but we were saying so many times on this show, it seems too obvious that they would like, you know, point the finger at her and be like, oh, she's our power broker. So maybe it's one of those things where it's like when you almost just say it, but you don't, then people kind of wonder and they're like, no way, it couldn't be. That doesn't seem like.
Yeah, they just play to us who just completely overthink everything when really that's very plain and simple.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get the perspective of someone who doesn't follow these as deeply as we do, and see if they're like, oh yeah, she's definitely the bad guy, or
Right.
the antagonist, let's say.
Another one of my favorite members of the cast that we heard from was Erin Kellerman, who played Carly. And this was another one where I was like, I was so happy. Like I smiled, like just the biggest goofy smile when she was talking about like how excited she was to find out the character she was playing. And then she was reading the comics and seeing that they changed this character from being a man and changed it to a young girl, and how that really got her excited. And it was very fun to hear from her.
Yes, and I forget who was talking about it, but like they needed to make her likable, and she needed to have this like lightness and innocence, but also this seriousness to her, and she just balanced all of those elements of Carly so beautifully, because you did feel for her.
Absolutely.
You understood where she was coming from. I mean, at least for me, it was like, I'm kind of on your side. I don't know enough about your organization or what you're trying to do to fully make up my mind, but there's something very appealing about her as the leader.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There were a lot of times throughout the series where I absolutely understood where Carly was coming from and felt for her, and never saw her as like, oh, I hate this villain. It was never that character. And I think this was a perfect casting job, because they, like you said, they talked about needing somebody with that innocent face but yet eyes that are so serious and like need to be taken seriously. And I think this actress is a perfect casting for that role. I think she did a phenomenal job.
I agree.
Another big interesting part of this, and really this ate up like most of the back half of this documentary, was talking about the visual effects. And there were some really, really cool scenes. You got to see a lot of like the stunt footage. So just like all the stunt actors working on the choreography with just nothing around them but green screens. That was pretty cool to see. This moment in particular, so obviously this is a practical thing happening right here. This is just Sebastian Stan hanging onto a little like railing there. But in the actual show, the road was CGI, the tire behind him was CGI, everything was just completely manufactured. And that is mind-blowing to me, because I never would have guessed that so much of the stuff in this show was CGI.
Yeah, I completely agree. This was, like you said, mind-blowing. I appreciated that they showed, even in like the warehouse or the studio where they were, had set up, even just like taped stuff and like mats and foam blocks to indicate like, oh, this is where this is going to be, working with their different stunt actors to kind of create the scene. And then they just keep painting layers on top of it. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was very intrigued by this scene in particular, because I'm like, how did they do that? Is there actually a spinning tire? Are they putting Sebastian that close to it? It looks a lot like him.
Yeah.
Like kind of dangerous.
Yeah, and they went into a lot of details about this particular scene. There was one thing that they mentioned that really like shocked me as well. There's a moment where Wyatt Russell, playing John Walker, gets knocked off the back of the truck, and they were filming this in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So he got knocked off the back of the truck in Atlanta, but he landed in Prague because that's where they shot that part of it. And then they digitally made all of it to look like Germany. So you got 3 different cities involved in this one, like, I mean, two shots, I guess, but it's just like one, I don't know, 10-second sequence. And that goes back to like all of the stuff you don't think of, all of that work that went into creating this. That's, you know, again, 10 seconds of one episode.
Right.
And that was filmed in 2 different places and then digitally a third.
Yep. And I also liked when that opening sequence from the very first episode with the, I don't know, skydivers, I guess they were. I thought that was
the flight suits.
Yes, flight suits. That was really cool that they actually, that was some
Yeah.
of that, elements of that were actual footage. And yeah, you see them, this team, like in their flight suits, diving out of planes with cameras on their helmets. And because that was one of the things that I'm like, how did they shoot this? How did they get any of that? So yeah, just
and obviously Anthony Mackie's parts of it were CGI'd, but like you would think of all of the parts in this, like that whole thing would have been CGI, but no, these were actual people, and they said they actually got the best flight suit flyers in the world to film that, and that's so awesome. That's such an awesome touch.
Right? Can you imagine? You're like, I get to be in a Marvel show. What do? I get to jump out of a plane.
Right.
Fly through the sky.
I'm an absolute adrenaline junkie. I'm a bit of a daredevil. That is something I have never, ever wanted to do. That is terrifying to me. And these people, they did it, for this show.
You have jumped out of a plane though, right?
I have, yes. Skydiving, parachute, but flight suit, yeah, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So we talked about him a little bit before, but here is Malcolm Spellman, the writer. And I thought it was interesting that we got to a point where they're talking about Sam's Captain America speech, that big speech that he gives at the end of the finale, and well, close to the end of the finale. And I thought it was so interesting that Spellman talks about him and Anthony Mackie having just an hours-long conversation about every line of that speech, and him asking, do you feel comfortable with that line? Is that something you would say and you believe in? And that's how they work through every single line of that. And that's how they came out with the finished product. And I mean, we talked about last week, the speech felt a little long. It was a long speech. So that must have been a very long conversation.
Right? Yeah. As much as I thought the scene itself was a little odd. I think we talked about, like last week when we talked about it, it felt very much like stuff that Sam would say. And then you find out that they put that much time into crafting this speech, and it's like, okay, that makes perfect sense. And that's why, at least for me, it felt very true to that character. So yeah, I know. I can't imagine how much time actually went into it, but yes, you're right. It was a long speech.
Yeah, but that's just, again, another testament to how much work goes into creating something like this and how dedicated the actors are to that. Because that seems like, Anthony Mackie could have easily been like, I'm not working right now. Like I'll work when I'm on the set. But this is him having a conversation over the phone at home, and that just shows his dedication to this role and what it means to him.
Well, and I think that's part of the appeal of the MCU characters.
Mm-hmm.
Even like I can't think of anyone right now who doesn't seem committed to that character. Yeah. And like we see these characters, and yeah, that, okay, Anthony Mackie isn't actually Sam Wilson. Like there's two different people here. But as a fan, you're like, they actually embody this as much as we think of them,
right?
Doing that. So I think that just adds a level of I don't know. Yeah, like it's genuine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Authenticity. There we go. Level of authenticity. I was gonna come up with some crazy words that were not real words.
Well, so it's funny that you bring that word up, because one of the things that I was surprised to find out was CGI'd, and we talked about this last week, how with the new Captain America suit, we thought the headgear was a little weird, right? Like something seemed a little bit off about it. And yeah, it turns out it was actually CGI'd. At least parts of it were. And you can see here, he kind of like it loosens up. It kind of like bulges out a little bit because the material just, when he turned his head, it couldn't stay completely flush against his face. And so they actually CGI'd the headgear on this new suit. And I thought that was so funny.
Yes. Yeah. And a level of detail that I would not have thought about.
Right. And it's 100% like now you see this footage and him like moving and this stuff, like, yeah, it didn't look good. So like they needed to do that. And it's just another thing you don't ever think of, like that just would ever have to be done.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that brings us to the end of this this episode of Assembled, the making of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Was there any other parts of this that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on?
I think we got everything. We'll finish this and I'll be like, oh, I should have said this part and this part. But no, I think we touched on everything.
Yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I love that they're doing this, like giving us that extra look into all the stuff that goes into these series. And I believe we're getting them for the movies as well. I believe that going back to when they first announced this documentary series that they said movies and television. So we should be getting one for Black Widow, which will be very interesting. Hopefully they'll talk about the delays and everything that they've dealt with this movie.
They're like, this movie's a year and like what, 4 months after, a year and 3 months after it was originally supposed to be out.
And then we'll get one with Loki as well when that comes out. Well, we don't know the number of episodes for Loki yet, I don't think, do we? But it does start.
I don't remember.
Yeah, June 11th is when it starts. So, and that'll overlap with Black Widow. We'll be getting a lot of Marvel content starting in middle of June, and then it's gonna keep picking up because the back half of this year is loaded, as you saw with that Marvel video, which you can see right now at laughingplace.com. I mean, there's so much. We still have 4 more series to come out this year, and 3 movies, 4 movies. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff to come. So we're gonna be very busy talking about Marvel pretty much every Monday once June rolls around. But until then, we have a little bit of a break, like we said. So we won't be back next Monday. We won't be back until June after the first episode of Loki. And in our place, we will have Mike C talking about Star Wars Bad Batch. So that's going to be fun. Return to a galaxy far, far away. We also, of course, later on today have Disney Parks Talk Live coming up at 4 p.m. Pacific. We have LP Movie Club tonight talking about Oklahoma at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And then tomorrow we will still have Marvel time. So we are going to continue with some Marvel content throughout this gap in Marvel Monday. So you can join us for the latest in Marvel Comics and whatever other Marvel news might pop up. That'll be Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And of course, Bekah will be back tomorrow night with Barely Necessities. Yeah,
I think we're going to be talking a lot about Star Wars because May the 4th is kind of a special day.
That's very true. Yeah, there's a little something to do with Star Wars on that date.
Yeah.
So yeah, that should be fun. But aside from that, we will see everyone in about a month and a half, I guess. So until then, bye everyone. Thanks for watching.